Recording in progress. Thank you, Sarah. So with the contracts being thrown together, look, I have certain feelings on it, and I don't think that we should touch a contract or prepare a contract. I mean, the state allows us to take a 2-week class, get a C- on it, and then represent people in the most important and expensive transaction of their entire life and allow us to prepare the documents. So that's a whole nother story in itself, but it allows us to do that. Okay. The part with the contract itself with opinion 26, do you guys know, can you like raise hands on this thing? You can raise hands on this thing. Do you guys know what opinion 26 is? Raise your hand if you know what opinion 26 is. Okay. Everyone knows the front page of the contract that talks about the right to an attorney. That front page, if you look at it, says opinion. That is opinion 26. Hold on 1 second. Let me shut the door. So that allows us to prepare the contract, but also states that the buyer has the right to get an attorney and review the contract. We operate very differently in South Jersey than Central Jersey, North Jersey, and the Shore. I don't know why. I think they have it right with having attorneys involved. And people talk about attorneys being involved in a transaction and that they get upset about it. And I don't see the reason why. Guys, when I was actively selling, I had an attorney represent every one of my clients, and I worked out an agreement with an attorney to pay half of the fee. So I told my clients that you can have an attorney represent you from contract to close, and it was maybe $400 or $500 at the time. And I happily paid that because from contract to close, I didn't have anything to do. And what you need to understand too, there's good attorneys, there's bad attorneys. I get that. And having the right attorney involved in a transaction is going to save you a lot of time. It's going to save you a lot of aggravation. It's going to allow you to sleep a little bit better at nighttime. And it's going to take an immense amount of liability off of your shoulders. Immense amount of liability. Because if your client has an attorney representing them, guess who's on the hook legally for that? The attorney. Okay. And not you guys. All right. The other part of it with the agreement and the contract itself is the wording and the verbiage of how it gets put together. And some of you have probably called me before in the past and asked a question about a contract, and 9 out of 10 times my reply is going to be, what does the contract say? Because your answer is going to be in the contract. You have to slow down and take your time and read through the contract. A lot of people, buyers and sellers out there, think that, well, what they sign with us doesn't mean anything. And it's just a realtor that wrote this thing up, and it's not an actual contract, and we can just do whatever we want. And that is not the case, guys, at all. Not the case at all. That contract is legally binding on all parties, guys, on all parties. Okay. And everything that contract says is the Bible when it comes to the actual contract itself and when it comes to the transaction itself. So my advice to everyone, you got to understand how to talk to your clients about having them utilize an attorney. It doesn't make sense to me for someone not to get an attorney when they're purchasing a property or selling a property. Most expensive investment in their entire life. You have a party that's spending $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 to buy a property, but they're not willing to spend $800 to $1,200 to have an attorney represent them in that transaction. This is a legal document that is being signed, a legal transaction. You have to be very conscientious about practicing law when you're dealing with this contract. Why wouldn't someone get an attorney? It's because we don't sit there and advise them to do that, or the people are just being cheap. Guys, you're spending 300 grand. What's $1,000? And guess what? It's a reimbursable closing cost. So you can get that put in as far as a closing cost, guys, and have that taken care of. So if you want some more ideas on how to convince your client to utilize an attorney, let me know. We'll have that conversation. But I'm telling you, on every single transaction that I did where there was an attorney involved and represented my client from contract to close, I did squata. I did nothing. Okay. I didn't deal with inspections. I didn't deal with negotiations. I didn't deal with response letters. I didn't deal with any of that stuff. I didn't deal with trying to change the contract around. I didn't deal with any of that. Somehow North Jersey and North Jersey realtors and Central Jersey agents and Shore agents, somehow they actually get away with doing real estate. Somehow they do it. They sell millions and millions of dollars of homes a year. And all they do is have attorneys represent their clients, and that's it. So people down here don't like change. They're scared of it, and they're scared of attorneys because we've had deals blow up from attorneys before. I get that. But if you think about it too, if you're dealing with an attorney that could be blowing up the transaction, if you have a real estate attorney in your corner for your client, the odds of that blowing up go way, way down. Probably not going to happen because the two attorneys will get on the phone and they'll hash it out. Okay. The other part of it is I've talked to agents before where they say, well, you know, the other party has an attorney. I can't talk to the attorney. Yes, you can. You pick up the phone and you have a conversation with the attorney. The attorney is just another person. That's all they are. They're just another person. And a lot of times these guys have boilerplate templates that they use for attorney review or for inspections and response to the inspections. And most of the time, it's not even them that is filling that out. It's their legal clerk or whoever it is at their office, their legal assistant, that's just taking the information, plugging it in and sending it off without actually sitting down and reading through and thinking about it. That's why you pick up the phone, you have a conversation with someone, have a conversation with the attorney and get it hashed out. So it's definitely in your best interest as an agent because there are more deals falling apart now than ever before. More is falling apart now than ever before. And it's most of the time it's because, and there's more escrow issues right now than ever before. And most of the time it is because the contract is so fucked up and people are not taking time to sit there and go through the contract and understand all the terms of the contract. If you don't know the contract like the back of your hand, you're doing your business a disservice and you're doing your client a disservice. You have to know the contract like the back of your hand, because when it comes down time to it, they're going to ask for all of the advice with the contract. They're asking for your guidance when dealing with that contract for sale. And you have to know what it is that you're talking about. You have to know the terms. And people will ask me, well, how long do I have to respond to this? How long do I have for that? The answer is in the contract. You're going to get your answer in the contract. And I can tell you this, if things start to go south with the contract for sale, you have to make sure that you and your client follow the contract and the wording in there and follow it to the letter. Because if it is not followed to the letter, it will not go well on your behalf. I promise you, it will not go well on your behalf. Nobody's going to care. No attorneys are going to care. No judge is going to care if it gets in front of a judge. No judge is going to sit there and care that, well, this person said that, this person said this, and they're not going to factor in emotions whatsoever. Well, I don't like what happened, and this person was being an ass. Who cares? What does the contract say? That's what we need to follow. Alex, can you mute yourself, bud? Thank you. Does that make sense? And guys, if you have any questions through this, please just stop and fire off a question. You have to wait to the end, because if you do, you're probably going to forget it, or I'll forget it. But if you have questions on it as we're going through, just stop and let me know. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen. Any questions on anything that I covered so far? Good. Okay. All right. I'm going to share my screen. If some of you are not able to see my screen, if you cannot see the screen, then just let me know. Raise your hand or say something. All right. I got to get rid of this thing in here. Okay. Okay. All right. Ready? Good. Here we go. So this right here, this whole page, guys, is opinion 26. This whole page is opinion 26, where you have to, when you're doing the contract yourself, you have to stipulate what party you represent. Okay. And this has to be signed. This is a part of the contract for sale. You will not see this in attorney prepared contracts, because attorney prepared contracts do not have opinion 26. Opinion 26 grants us as agents the authority to prepare the contract. For whatever reason, I don't know. But when you look at the state ruling on that, you'll get it. But again, whole different class in itself with us doing it. All right. So I have some areas highlighted in this, and these are the main points I'm going to cover. Okay. And I urge you and beg you guys, read the contract every single day until you know exactly what it says and exactly what all these terms are. Okay. And at some point in the future, Tim will do one on PA contracts. He just found that out. All right. Right here. This is the most important part of this page. This contract becomes final and binding unless the lawyer cancels it within the following 3 business days from all parties signing and having a copy of the contract. All parties need to sign and receive a copy of the signed contract. That begins attorney review. I'm telling you that I have spoken to agents who have been in the business for 15 years and 20 years and still get confused on when attorney review begins. And I can't tell you how crucial that is to know what the attorney review timeline is. Okay. All parties sign. And here's the other part too. Agents will bicker back and forth about should the buyer sign or seller sign. Who cares? It doesn't matter who signs first. Just get it out and have everyone sign it. It doesn't matter who signs it first. The objective is to have everyone sign it, so it doesn't matter because attorney review does not begin until everyone signs and they receive a fully signed copy. Now, what's today? Tuesday? Okay. So follow the timeline. Today's Tuesday. Okay. Chrissy, I'm using your name because I see your face. Chrissy signs a contract. All right. Is involved in transaction. Buyer and seller signs a contract today. Everyone receives a copy. Attorney review is Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Attorney review will end at 11:59 p.m. on Friday. It is not it doesn't end at 5 o'clock or 8 o'clock. It runs the entire day. Okay. Begins the following business day. So everyone receives it today. Attorney review goes Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and expires on Friday. Everyone understand that? If you don't, speak up. Okay. Now, scenario number 2. Chrissy's buyer signs a contract today. Seller signs contract tomorrow. Everyone receives the contract on Wednesday. Attorney review will then go Thursday, Friday, and Monday, and it ends 11:59 on Monday. Okay. Anytime in that time period, the contract can be canceled for no reason whatsoever. A reason does not have to be provided. No one's got to tell you why. They're allowed to cancel the contract. Any party can cancel for no reason whatsoever. However, you cannot cancel it. The buyer cannot cancel it. The seller cannot cancel it. Only an attorney can cancel the contract. Once it enters attorney review, only an attorney can cancel the contract. So sometimes people have said and got emails saying, hey, you know what, we changed our mind, contract's over. Okay. Good for you. If you don't get a letter from an attorney terminating that contract, the contract is still binding. I have certainly, as being a manager of some other offices, I've seen a lot, and I see people play a lot of games with the attorney review. Okay. Some people will delay signing the contract and to have attorney review begin so they can use the weekend to either talk to an attorney, try and get another offer, go look at other houses, whatever it is. And there's nothing that you can do about it. Nothing your client can do about it. Okay. That's just the law. 3 business days and can only be canceled by an attorney in those 3 business days. Okay. Does anyone have a question on that? Because it is very important. I'm telling you, 20 years, people in the business still don't get it. No? Okay. Moving on. And guys, again, I'm not going to go through everything here word by word because we'll be here for 17 days and I don't want to do that. I want to try and really get this wrapped up in about an hour. Okay. All right. Up here, parties to the purchase. Guys, you got to make sure you have the right people's name that's in there. And whether if it is an LLC or if it's an estate, you have to make sure, or an executor, executrix, you have to make sure you have the proper parties in here as far as the contract goes. Okay. That is their name. Okay. Property address down here. Thank you. The property up here where it has whose address is, as far as the seller right here, that may not be the address down here. If you have an LLC or if it's an investment property, there the seller's home address where they reside is what goes here. The property address that is actually being transferred goes right here. So make sure you understand the difference and distinction between the two. Okay. Lot and block go right here, here. Okay. Sometimes people have some issues with the math. And here's what I can tell you. If you do it in dot loop, it does the math for you. Or you got to calculate it. Use that. Okay. Use a calculator. Purchase price right here. Initial deposit. This is the escrow deposit. It goes in this line right here. An additional deposit. If there is a negotiation where there's an additional deposit, that's where that will go. If someone's putting down another $10,000 after inspections are done, or after a short sale approval is obtained, if there's a situation where there's an additional deposit, drop that in here. The mortgage, that is how much of a mortgage they are taking out. Are they taking out an 80% mortgage, 96.5% mortgage, 90% mortgage? That goes right in here in this box over here. And this is the balance. All you got to do is you take the purchase price, subtract, 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 boom, your balance goes right there. Okay. Questions? Okay, moving on. All right. Over here, the escrow deposit is being paid by the buyer to, this is very important, guys. I will hold an escrow deposit. I prefer not to. In my opinion, it is freaking stupid for one of the brokerages to hold the escrow deposit. It just creates more work and adds another step into the layer for it. Okay. We don't need to do that. Best thing to do, have the title company hold the escrow deposit. Wherever closing is going to be done, whatever title company is being utilized, have them hold the escrow. That way they have the money there already. Okay. All right. I understand some old school brokerages are adamant on listing company and all this other crap holding the escrow. Who cares? The escrow laws are so specific that the escrow deposit will never be released unless there is signed authorization from both parties or a court order telling the escrow holder how to disperse those funds, period. Nobody will release that escrow, okay? If they do, they will go to jail. It is very specific. The laws are very specific with that. So to make everyone's life easier, just have the title company, have your buyer's title company hold the escrow deposit, okay? If there's a post-settlement escrow, no problem. I'll hold them. I still have some of those right now. That's fine. It just creates an extra step and unnecessary step, okay? All right, that goes there. Additional deposit, if there's one being placed there. Down here, it is in a non-interest bearing trust account, okay? People need to understand that it goes in a non-interest bearing trust account. Only one time have I ever had someone ask to have it in an interest bearing escrow account, and that was because they were putting down about $80,000 for a new construction home that was going to take forever to be built. Okay, but if someone wants interest, give them a quarter at closing, and they'll be happy. They'll take care of all the interest. Okay, all right. Right here, if there is a dispute over the escrowee may place the deposit monies in court, requesting the court to resolve the dispute. It's the only time that it'll get released. Okay, but they have to petition the court for that. All right. All right. Moving on. This paragraph right here is one of the most important paragraphs in the contract you're going to deal with. And this is if the buyer is obtaining a mortgage. If it's cash, you don't have to worry about it. If they're obtaining a mortgage, this is an incredibly important paragraph that you have to understand the terms of it, and you have to understand the timelines that are in here too. If the buyer is getting a mortgage, okay, buyer must apply in writing. They have to actually do the application, because we have sometimes where the buyer is shopping out 17 different lenders after they sign the contract. We actually just had a scenario with that a week ago, that there was an issue that the buyer had their loan in process and they were talking to 5 different lenders while the agreement was going on. So they have to apply in writing with the lender within 10 calendar days after the attorney review period is completed. Okay. If they do not apply within those 10 calendar days, they could be held in breach of contract. Okay. Let me speak to that real quick as far as the breach. We have to be very conscientious of the terminology that we use when we're talking to people. Hold on one second. So give me 1 second, guys. All right, I'm going to stop the screen share real quick. Okay, going back to screen share. All right, be very conscientious, guys, of the terminology that you use when you're speaking to people. Okay, if a deal is going south and you represent either party, buyer or seller, do not ever let the word breach come out of your mouth. Don't tell the buying agent, hey, your buyer's in breach of contract. What does that do if you sit there and say the buyer's in breach of contract? What does that do?
You're becoming a lawyer.
Correct.
And you're not.
Correct. Okay. Right. As soon as you say that, you are now practicing law. You cannot do that. The way you say everything means everything. What I would say is that, look, I hear you. I understand. I will speak to the seller and I will let you know if they agree to release the escrow deposit. That's it. That's all you got to say. Keep it simple. Don't get emotional about it. Don't get wrapped up into it. I'll have a discussion with the seller and I'll let you know if the seller will agree to release the escrow deposit. That's all. Don't sit there and say, well, I'm going to keep the escrow. First off, it ain't yours. Don't take ownership of it. Can't do that. How you say everything means everything. I'll have a conversation with the seller. I'll have a conversation with the buyer, and I'll get back to you and let you know if the seller will agree to release the escrow. That's it. It's the seller's call. It ain't your call. It's no agent's call. No agent can say, I'm going to keep it. Your party breached the contract. I can't decide if someone breached the contract or not. I don't know that. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a court. Okay. So be very conscientious of what you're saying. All right. All right. Also here, buyer supply, necessary information, fee is required, the proposed lender, and shall authorize the lender to communicate with the real estate brokers and involved attorney. But sometimes it does happen where you have to sit there and you as the listing agent call the lender to ask information about them applying or where things stand. Sometimes the lender will tell you that they'll give you information that you need. Sometimes they won't. Okay. But this right here grants authorization for that to be spoken to. Okay. Principal amount. This is important, guys, as far as the principal amount that you put in there, because this is where in the contract it's stating and the buyer stating that they will get approved for a loan for X amount of dollars, regardless of what appraisal is or anything like that. This right here says how much that they will get. They are taking out a loan for the purchase of this property. This speaks nothing to an appraisal whatsoever. And then follow that over the type of mortgage. You have to check off what kind of mortgage that they're getting. Okay. We've been dealing a lot with appraisal issues. I'm sure you guys have been involved in appraisal issues. Okay. VA, FHA, properties under appraising. Here's what you need to understand. In a conventional loan contract, there is zero appraisal contingencies whatsoever. None. It doesn't matter if the property under appraises, guys. It doesn't. That does not give the buyer the right to back out of the contract. Okay. I have seen it enforced before. I have been in a contract when it has been enforced before. So if this principal amount says $300,000 and it's a conventional loan contract and the appraisal doesn't come in, the buyer still has to proceed as long as they can get approved for a mortgage in the amount of $300,000. Does that make sense to everyone? Any question on that, guys? You're all lying sacks of poo. Y'all got questions. You just don't want to sit there and ask it. No appraisal contingency in a conventional loan contract. Okay. Not saying anything going to fall apart because it's happened or people are going to sit there and move on, but you have to understand. And this is where, again, guys, if you have attorneys involved, you don't have to worry about it. And the attorney will invoke that. Okay. All right. Here's the other part. Mortgage commitment. Mortgage commitment must be delivered to seller's agent. You need to have a date in here. Guys, I still see contracts come across that do not have a date in there. Okay. The mortgage commitment clause, there has to be a date in there when the mortgage commitment is going to be delivered. Okay. If it's left blank within 30 calendar days, put something in there. Put a specific date in there. Oh God, this hot chocolate's awful. So thereafter, if buyer has not obtained the commitment, then either buyer or seller may void this contract by written notice to the other party and brokers within 10 calendar days of the commitment date or any extension of the commitment date, whichever is later. That wording is so important. It used to be in their older contracts, if you didn't have the mortgage commitment, deal's dead. That's not the case anymore. If you don't have the commitment delivered by this date, someone has to send something in writing. There has to be a written notice if the contract is going to be terminated. Make sense? Okay. Then down here, if the contract is voided, deposit money be given back. If the seller alleges in writing to the escrowee within said 10 calendar days of the commitment date or an extension thereof, if they don't want to release it. But there has to be something in writing from the seller that I think that the buyer acted in bad faith. That's why we don't have the mortgage commitment. I don't agree to release it. Okay. Follow along with what it says, guys. You got to understand what it says. It's not just automatic that the deal is dead if we don't have the commitment. It's not automatic. Follow that and read it and know those dates and know those timelines. And guys, this is what I'm telling you, that in .loop, if you use .loop religiously, like you should be using it, there are closing checklists and timelines in there. Okay. You can add the closing checklist to every single loop that you have. You can assign it to people, but more importantly, you can assign dates to it. So if the mortgage commitment is delivered, but needs to be delivered by a specific date, have that date checked off and put that in .loop. And that way you get notified about it a day or two ahead of time so you can call the lender or call the buyer's agent, find out what's going on. Okay. All right. Moving on. This right here, sufficient assets. Okay. This is so important because it goes back up to here. Buyer's taking out a mortgage for $300,000. They've been approved for a mortgage for $300,000. Not contingent on the appraisal if it's conventional, just for $300,000. And they are stating that they have the necessary assets to purchase the property. Should the buyer not have sufficient cash assets at closing, buyer will be in breach. This can say that in there because this wording was written by an attorney. So they can say that in there. So they can't come at you. And Tim, I know you dealt with a situation where buyer said they were backing out and said, well, the stock market took a hit, so I lost some money, so I can't buy it. Sorry. Not the seller's problem. Should have taken that money out and put it into a safe investment, safe account at that time where the value wasn't going to go down. So you have the necessary assets at closing. Because when they sign this contract, they're stating they have the assets to buy it. All right. All right. Moving on. Guys, again, stop if you have any questions. Okay. 6 and 7 are kind of a pet peeve of mine. What is included and what is excluded. For the love of God, if you see a contract, first off, if you ever do a contract that says, as per MLS, we're going to have a problem. Do not ever put in here as per MLS. The MLS is subject to errors and omissions. You do not want to sign a contract that is subject to errors and omissions. You want to sign a contract that is clear, concise, and specific. Okay? Do not put in here as per MLS. And if you get a contract that says as per MLS under inclusions or exclusions, change it, strike it, write it in exactly what's staying and what is going. Because if it's not specific in there and you get to closing or you go do your walkthrough and something was taken out that was supposed to be left behind, now you have an issue going into closing. It needs to be very specific. What is staying and what's going. And yes, guys, I wrote a cat into the contract before and had the cat included in the contract. It was Lucky the cat that had to stay with the house.
No.
Yeah, look, Lucky the cat had to stay there, was going down the street. So I'll tell you, couldn't go to where they were going. So be very specific. What appliances are staying? Are window treatment staying? Is the hardware for the window treatment staying? Are the brackets, the mounting bracket for the wall TVs, are they staying? Because I'm telling you, the wall bracket, if the TV's mounted on the wall, the wall bracket's supposed to stay. TV can go, wall bracket's supposed to stay because now it's affixed to the house. Okay. But you're going to get there. You can go to a walkthrough and the brackets are gone. And what do you have in the wall? Holes that big from the mounting brackets. Then you have an issue at closing where people are talking about, I want the wall, I want the holes taken care of. Okay. That needs to be addressed and have that taken care of. Be specific in inclusions and exclusions. Cool. Cool. Dates and time for a performance. This is why they have all that we're in here, but you got to follow the timeline. Okay. Got to follow the timeline. Time is of the essence. You deal with North Jersey attorneys, they try and strike that paragraph or that part from there. The time is not of the essence and we'll close whatever. Feel like closing today? Okay. If not, we can close next week. Hold on, I'm going to Tahiti. I'll be back next week. We can close. Okay. Our contracts, time is of the essence. Follow that. Know that. CO. CO is very important, guys. When you're listing a property, excuse me, when you're listing a property, when you list that property and you meet with the seller, you should have with you what the requirements are for that township CO. That way you're not springing on them last minute what has to be done. There are some townships that are easy. There are some townships that are hard, really, really hard. Pennsauken is notorious for it. Gloucester City is notorious for it. There are some townships that are incredibly challenging and give a laundry list like this of things that have to be taken care of for the CO. If you get under contract with your seller and they think they're going to walk out of there with X amount of dollars, and then you break this onto them as far as the CO and they have to spend another $5,000 to get the CO, it's going to come back on you. Whenever you go out and you list a property, go out with what the requirements are for the CO so they know exactly what it is they're going to be looking at. Okay. They have to know that. And if your buyer is buying a property as is, give your buyer a list of what the CO requirements are, because the CO is going to be on them and they have to know what they're looking at. I've had people spend $8,000 to get a CO before. People may have other stories where they've had to spend more than $8,000, where they've had to spend a couple grand. Some of them are not cheap to get. Okay. And the repairs that they have to do. Got it? Also, this part here, guys, when you're filling this in, be conscientious of this, because as far as that cost to cure for the CO, if it's blank, this paragraph is, or this line is new to the contract in the last 4 or 5 years or so. But if you don't enter a dollar figure there of $500, $750, $1,000, then it is 1.5% of what the purchase price is going to be. Okay. All right. And if you're selling a $500,000 house, 1.5% of that, guys, $7,500. That's going to be on the seller to take care of. Okay. So understand that and read through that. Questions on the CO? Good. All right. Title has got to be clear. You need clear title to close. If you don't have clear title, you're not closing. Okay. Moving on. Is that easy enough? Good. All right. I'm going to go through that. All right. Tenancy, guys. This here is, it's come up before. If there's a tenant in the property that your party is buying, or even if it's something that you're listing, you have specific requirements that you need to meet and things that you need to do when it comes down to the contract. Okay. Possession, occupancy, it'll be given to the buyer at the time of closing. Is there a tenant in place? Is there not a tenant in place? Is there going to be a tenant there at closing? Is the tenant going to vacate at closing? Occupancy was subject to the tenancies listed below. As of the closing, seller represents tenancies are not in violation of any municipal, county, state rules, regulations. Seller agrees to transfer all security deposits to buyer at the closing. You need to get a copy of the lease concerning the tenancy. You need to understand what that is. Is there a tenant, a tenancy agreement in place that is going to expire 6 months from now, a year from now? Was it a 2-year lease? Is it month to month? Because a lease survives the sale. Now, the other part about it, if someone's buying a property and there's a tenant there and the listing agent seller says, look, no problem, don't worry about it. Tenant will be out of there by closing. Okay. What should you add to the contract? Anyone?
That the property will be vacant at time of walkthrough and settlement.
Correct. Thank you, Tim. You have to make sure you write that into the contract. That needs to be added to it, guys, that the property will be delivered vacant at the time of closing. If the property is not delivered vacant, settlement's not going to happen. Settlement will not take place. Okay. I have been a party of transactions and overseen transactions before where that was not in there, and they go to the walkthrough and the tenant's still there and the tenant's crap still in the house. There you go. And it's also not checked off in here that it's not subject to tenancies. Okay, that's a problem. This is why I'm saying that you have to slow down to the contract and understand what it is that you are signing and what your client is signing. You have to understand that. Okay. Guys, we get so ramped up and so excited that we work with a client for 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, and we get a contract and we're all excited. We're looking forward to a payday, and that's great. And then we get the contract and we want to get them locked in so bad. Or like you just fire it off from dot loop. Like, all right, here you go. Here's contract, guys. Get it signed. Let me know if you have any questions. They sign it, comes back, goes to the other agent. They sign. Everyone's locked up in a contract. And then 2 weeks later, people start to question the terms of the contract when it should have been done in the first place. That's why, A, it's good to have an attorney represent your client. You don't have to worry about that. But the other part is that you have to slow down and read the contract. It is the most important part of your transaction because it will dictate how it is going to go and how it's going to proceed. Make sense? Slow down, guys. Lead-based paint, read through that, guys. I don't need to read through this whole thing. Okay. Point of entry and cesspool, guys. If there's a cesspool on the property, you got a big issue. Big issue. So you need to understand if there's a cesspool on the property. Okay. That is going to be an issue with transferring title and being able to close. Okay. Here we go. We're going to spend a good amount of time on this right here as far as the inspections, because this is where everything gets all screwed up. This is where deals are blowing up left and right because people are not reading through this and not taking the time to understand the inspection clause or explain the inspection clause to their client. This is what you guys got to know like the back of your hand. I'm not going to read through every word here because again, it'll take forever, but I want to talk about it and talk about the timelines. 16A through, where you go? There you go. Sorry. Responsibilities of home ownership. And I got into a debate with the guy who talked about the home or every sale as is. I see it. Good luck. Okay. Okay. So brokers and salespersons, we have not had any special training when it comes to properties, the structure of properties, mechanicals, environmental conditions. We haven't. Yet they allow us to negotiate that again. Don't really get that, but whatever. We've not had that special training. Okay. This clears that up. However, we still need to be able to visually verify what they're talking about on a disclosure form when you're having a seller sign a disclosure form. And that's why, guys, if you send the disclosure form to the party via dot loop and they fill it out and send it back to you remote, get your butt out to the house and walk through the house if you haven't done it. Because look, we've certainly done deals and listed properties that we haven't been in because it's a referral. We have a great relationship with the person or they're out of state or anything like that. Get out to the house, verify everything that you're seeing on the disclosure form and ask questions on anything that you go through and you're not sure about. Okay. Make sense? But take the time to do it because it is incredibly, incredibly important. All right. This little friggin' thing. On 1 second. Okay. There we go. That's better. I had to get the little box out of there. I'm sorry. All right. The radon. Okay. When you're talking about the radon test and getting that done, look, when your buyer orders inspections, they should order home inspection, termite inspection, radon inspection all at the same time. And most inspectors out there take care of them all at the same time as well. Okay. And you have to understand where there's hot pockets of radon. And if you go to the state DEP site, you'll be able to see that and get an idea about what radon really is, and then where there's different hot pockets in different areas where they got to make sure they absolutely should get an inspection done. Okay. So radon inspection's done. Okay. Buyer shall have the right to void the contract by notifying the seller in writing within 7 business days of the receipt of any report. Okay. This is not the home inspection. This is the radon inspection. Follow the timelines because again, it is different. It has a different paragraph in there. Okay. Kelly, you just jumped on. If you can mute your phone too, that'd be great. Okay. Thank you very much. So buyer has the right to conduct an inspection, subject and conditions set forth in paragraph D below. Yes. And then if any test results come back and it comes back higher than 4.0 picocuries per liter, buyer has the right to void the contract by notifying seller in writing within 7 business days from receipt of the report. Okay. For whatever reason, when the geniuses who did this contract, they go back and forth sometimes between business days and calendar days, which is stupid, but they do. So that's why I have to make sure you understand the terms and what type of days that you're dealing with. Okay. So if it comes back that it's high, seller shall have a 7 business day period after receipt of the report to notify the buyer in writing that seller agrees to remediate the gas concentration to an acceptable level, which is below 4.0, as provided by the preceding paragraph. Okay. So buyer's going to sit there and say that they're going to hand over the report, receipt of the report. Seller then has 7 business days to get back to them if they're going to take care of it. If seller fails to notify buyer of seller's agreement to so remediate, such failure to so notify shall be deemed to be a refusal by the seller to remediate the radon level to an acceptable level, and then buyer has the right to void the contract again by notifying seller in writing within 7 calendar days now thereafter. So, have the inspection done, comes back high, seller has an opportunity to reply back to the buyer if they are going to remediate. If they don't reply back to the buyer that they are going to remediate, then that is viewed as a refusal. Okay, makes sense? Then the buyer has that time period to void the contract. 7 calendar days after those 7 business days. If the buyer fails to void the contract within those 7 business days, buyer has waived the right to cancel this contract due to radon. Okay. Does everyone follow along with that timeline? Please speak up if you do not.
Hey, it's Jeremy. I just have a question. obviously. So are the 7 calendar days concurrent with the 7 business days, or are they, does one happen before the other?
So the first part that happens is the inspection's done.
Yep.
If it comes back high, okay, buyer has the right to void the contract by notifying seller within 7 business days of receipt of the report.
Of the receipt.
Buyer has to send the report to the seller. Okay, now down here, seller has 7 business days from receipt of the report to notify the buyer if they're going to remediate.
Okay.
If the seller agrees to remediate, buyer proceeds. Contract proceeds. Okay. If the seller does not notify the buyer about the remediation, buyer then has another time period, excuse me, to void the contract. And that is the 7 calendar days. Okay. So buyer has timeline to get the inspections done. They submit that report. If the levels are high, they submit the report to the listing agent / seller. Seller has 7 business days to reply if they're going to take care of it, if they're going to remediate. If they do not, the buyer then has 7 calendar days to void. Okay. I know it's stupid. I don't get that part as far as the business calendar. I get it, guys. It's a little confusing, but this is why everything in the contract you have to read and follow the timeline. Because if things hit the crapper and it goes to court, the timeline not followed, the person that did not follow the timeline is going to lose.
So
Okay?
Mark, I have a property under contract that the radon came back at 9.7. They think it was tampered with because they left it out in the rain, blah, blah, blah. The mailman took it out of the plastic bag, sent it to the lab, blah, blah, blah. So we're doing another one. There's
Okay.
another one set now. So after that comes back, of course, if it's higher, we're
Did you
going to
get
ask
an
for the
addendum
mitigation.
did you get an addendum extending it?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So, go ahead.
You got an addendum extending. Now, you guys, I want everyone to pay attention to this, please. Pay everyone on this call, pay attention to this. Krista, you got an extension. An
Mhm.
addendum extending the timeline. Okay.
Yeah,
That addendum that you got is subject to what?
the radon test coming back?
That
No.
addendum is subject to a 3 business day attorney review period.
Oh, shit, okay.
Every single addendum that we do, guys, is subject to a 3 business day attorney review period.
I never knew that.
Period.
Okay.
Okay. You got to read the addendum. That's on the addendum. That's on every single
Okay.
addendum. Okay. Here's the other part. You guys got to understand that people, and I had one person that I know of in my career use that to bind someone to a contract because they tried to do an addendum to the contract in the 2nd business day of the attorney review, then added in an addendum that was subject to a 3 business day attorney review. After the contract 3 business day attorney review is up, they canceled that addendum. And then what was written in the initial contract is what was binding on all parties. Okay. So you need to understand this. Now, again, this is another reason why I talk about having an attorney in the contract, because attorney addendums are not subject to attorney review. So be conscientious of that, guys. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, Chrissy, I'm sorry. So
No, that's it. So the seller's agent is already on guard that if it comes back again, high, we have to put a mitigation system in, and they're willing to do that.
Okay.
But yeah, so.
okay. Follow the
That's
timelines. If you need more time, you got to get an extension. Okay.
Mhm.
Got to
Okay.
get an extension. All right. All right, ready to move on, guys? Move on to termite. Okay. So termite inspection, bargain inspection done.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah.
Quick question. So with
Yeah.
the addendum and the 3-day review, with Jersey, would you wait to do the radon inspection until the review is up, or would you be fine with ordering it?
I don't care. It doesn't matter to me if someone does all the inspections while you're still in attorney review. It makes it
Okay.
easier to bounce out, for no reason whatsoever. People have certainly done that while they've done inspections in attorney review. If it comes back, they're not happy with the inspection, they can just cancel for no reason. especially when people are purchasing properties as is. Sometimes sellers won't allow that because they want the buyer locked into the contract before they go ahead and do and allow the inspections on the house. Seller does not have to allow that to happen. They don't have to allow inspection to be done during a turn review. They can certainly tell them you're waiting. But to me, I don't look at it as, to me, it's 6 of one, half dozen the other, because I tell the seller, look, if they want to get out, they're going to get out.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So, I mean, like I said, it doesn't really matter either way. Okay. All right. Coming through here, buyer shall pay for the inspection, termite, unless buyer's lender prohibits buyer from paying, in which case seller shall pay. Guys, is there any situation where the buyer's lender prohibits the buyer from paying the termite inspection?
VA, right?
Me.
VA
What's that?
loans? VA loans?
That used to be correct.
Oh.
That used to be correct. And then I think we just found out a couple weeks ago that actually changed. So it did we post something about that Facebook group? No? All right, we will. Yeah, that actually changed. So the buyer is actually permitted to pay for the inspection on the VA. But the answer was correct up until a short time period ago. So I was just trying to see if anyone knew that. Anyway, moving on. Good job. All right. Inspection to be completed and written reports must be furnished to seller and broker within X amount of days or at blank 14 calendar days after attorney review. Okay. Has to be given, and it can't just be done, guys. So this is the other part where I say follow the contract terms. You can't do a termite inspection and it comes back, the treatment's required and there's damage, and then you call the other agent and say, sorry, a lot of termite treatment needs to be done and there's a lot of damage, so we're backing out of the contract. That is not what this paragraph says. Okay. Written report must be furnished to the seller. If you're not furnishing the report to the seller or the broker, you're not following the terms of the contract. Okay. The report shall state the nature and extent of any infestation and or damage. Okay. And the full cost of treatment for any infestation. People have asked before, well, there's nothing on the report that talks about damage or how much it's going to cost to fix the damage. It's not what the contract says. The report will state the nature and extent of any infestation and or damage and the full cost of treatment for the infestation. Doesn't say anything about the repairs. Okay. So when your termite inspection's done, if it comes back the treatment's needed, they should have the estimate on that report about how much it'll be to treat. Okay. Seller agrees to treat any infestation and cure any damage at seller's expense prior to closing, provided, however, if the cost to cure exceeds 1% of the purchase price of the property, either party may void this contract, provided they do so within 7 business days after report has been delivered to seller and brokers. So this does not give the seller the option of saying, I'll do it or I won't do it. It says the seller is going to take care of it. They agree to treat. They agree to take care of the damage up to 1% of the purchase price. Okay. However, so where it gets a little convoluted, follow along. If buyer and seller are unable to agree upon who will pay for the cost to cure, and neither party timely voids this contract, then buyer will be deemed to have waived its right to terminate the contract and will bear the cost to cure that is over 1% of the purchase price, with seller bearing the cost that is under 1% of the purchase price. Okay. And this is why attorneys go to law school for 3 years and take the bar exam so they can draft and write something like this. Seller agrees to treat and cure any damage prior to closing, provided the cost to cure, if the cost to cure exceeds 1%, then either party may void the contract. So if it's more than 1%, either party can void the contract, or they try and negotiate who's going to pay for what. Doesn't mean it's dead. Either party can void, or you negotiate who's going to pay for what. Now, if it can't be agreed on, that's the next part. If it can't be agreed on who's going to pay for what, and the contract is not voided in that timeline, okay, within those 7 business days, if it's not voided, then the buyers waive the right to terminate, and the seller has to pay up to 1%, and the buyer has to pay for an excess of the 1%. Is that confusing to anybody? Do you want me to walk through that timeline again in that situation? Speak now, forever hold your pieces, or else you can go back and watch this recording. Okay. All right. Moving on. There's no one has a question.
So Mark,
There you go.
in this situation, is it just a simple email or this is something that has to get drawn up by an attorney?
It doesn't have to get drawn up by an attorney. You mean as far as the negotiations for it?
Well, when it says that you have to terminate the contract, or you have waived your right. So if the buyer is not satisfied and they're still within that time frame, they can just say, you know what? We wish to terminate this contract, as long as it's in writing somewhere.
So I'll say this, anytime a contract is canceled, it
Mhm.
without a doubt should be done by an attorney. Okay. A party can engage an attorney and spend a couple $100 and say, look, I'm canceling the contract for this reason because of paragraph 16, article C, and they can cancel. It should come from an attorney. This is a legal document, legal contract for sale. It should come from an attorney. Salama, there's certainly been situations where both parties have agreed to be done and move on. And then a mutual release is drafted and signed, and that's okay. Okay. But my opinion, my feeling is that anytime someone is going to cancel a contract, it needs to be done, or should be done by an attorney. Okay. You know, this is where, again, lines of communication with the other party are crucial. Because if something like this happens, I'm going to pick up the phone, call the other agent, say, look, we did inspection. Everything's falling apart. It's $20,000 worth of damage that needs to be taken care of due to termites. And guys, I've seen up to 25 grand. So 20 grand is certainly doable. And we're just going to move on. And if the other party says, well, hold on, what if we agree to take care of it? We'll fix everything. Okay. And if the buyer still wants to move on at that point, engage an attorney, have them cancel. Okay. If both parties agree to be done, everyone can sign a mutual release and move on. Make sense?
Yes.
All right. Thanks for asking the question, Salam. I appreciate it. Any other questions before I move on? Okay. All right. Buys right to inspection. I get that this says, someone came at me the other day saying that every property is being sold as is because of this line right here. I get it. But when you follow along, there's other parts of that. Okay, as far as responsibility to cure. So haha to him. But anyway, all right. Inspections, buyer sole cost and expense. They're going to have it done. And it is to determine the existence of any physical defects or environmental conditions as outlined above. Okay. Physical defects or environmental conditions. This isn't cosmetic, guys. All right. Inspections must be completed, written repairs, including a list. I'm sorry. Written reports, including a list of repairs, buyers requesting must be furnished to seller and brokers within X amount of days or 14 calendar days after attorney review. This is so incredibly important, guys. And this comes up a lot, especially with how the contracts have been written recently. If buyer fails to furnish such written reports to seller and broker within X amount of days, calendar days, specified in this paragraph, this contingency shall be deemed waived by the buyer and the property shall be deemed acceptable by the buyer. This is so important, guys, because it comes up a lot that the buyer does inspections and they get cold feet or they get pissed off at the inspection report, or you get an inspection report that's 130 pages long and they just send an email to the listing agent. Sorry, inspection's bad. We're out and moving on. And they think that's it. That's not it. Because if they did that to me, I could sit there and wait till these 14 calendar days is over and get back to them and say, hey, we never received a written report or request for repairs from you within the 14 calendar days. So I will take that as your buyer has accepting the property as is, and I'll see you at closing. And we move forward and we close. Okay. When the inspection is done, the report including, not and or, including a list of repairs buyer is requesting must be furnished to seller and broker. So you cannot also send over the inspection report and say, we're done. Here's a copy of the report. We're out. You have to come up with a list of repairs. that pertains to existing physical defects or environmental conditions. Not that the doorknob doesn't friggin' work. Seen that before too. Okay. Does that make sense, guys? And if you don't do that, if the report along with the requested list of repairs is not submitted within that timeline, buyer waives the right and they accept the property the way that it is. Okay? Gabish, everybody? Make sense? Okay? Can't tell you how important that is. All right. Next, move on, responsibility to cure. If any physical defects or environmental conditions, there's anything found, seller has 7, and that goes over to the seller. Seller has 7 business days after receipt of the report to notify the buyer in writing that seller shall correct or cure any, not all, any of the defects set forth in the reports. Okay. So the way that this is written, guys, you got to understand a buyer can submit a list that is 20 items. A seller can reply stating, I'll take care of 2. That falls into any, shall correct or cure any of the defects. Okay. If seller fails to notify buyer or seller's, excuse me, of seller's agreement to so cure and correct, such failure to notify shall be deemed a refusal by the seller to cure anything. If seller fails to agree to cure or correct such defects within the 7 business day period, or if the eventable condition of the property is incurable, okay, and such limited to unreasonably alter the health, blah, 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 buyer shall then have the right to void the contract by notifying seller in writing within 7 business days thereafter. So, buyer has a timeline to conduct the inspection and submit the report with a requested list of repairs. Seller then has another timeline. Okay, this is calendar days for the buyer. Seller's response is is business days. And the seller has business days to reply what they're going to take care of. Okay. Everyone understand so far? Okay. If buyer fails to void the contract within 7 business day period, buyer is basically taking it and agreeing to what the seller agreed to. Okay. Make sense? 14 calendar days for the buyer to inspect, submit the requested list of repairs with report. Seller, 7 business days to reply what they're going to take care of, if they're going to take care of anything. From that, if the buyer's not satisfied, the buyer has 7 business days to void the contract thereafter. If they do not, they agree to the seller's terms. Okay? Does that make sense to everyone? If it does not, please let me know. By the way, if anyone sends me questions after this is done with something I covered, I'm going to call you out on the Facebook page. Ha ha. I won't do that, guys. Don't worry. Don't worry. All right. Everyone good with this? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. Moving on. Flood insurance, flood hazard. Find out if there's if the property is in a flood hazard, guys. Okay. In a floodplain. You can go to the FEMA website and you can find that out. Okay. Megan's law statement, do not remark anything about someone being a sex offender in the area. Do not say anything. Do not state anything. You're not allowed to do that. Don't do it. Okay. Moving on, moving on. Moving on. I'm not going to touch that. Means condition property. I'm not going to touch that. All right. Initial and final walkthroughs. Understand this. Seller agrees to permit buyer or buyer's duly authorized representative to conduct an initial and a final walkthrough inspection of the interior and exterior of the property at any reasonable time before the closing. Seller shall have all utilities in service for the inspections. So your buyer is really granted a couple walkthroughs. Okay, you can do a walkthrough. You're entitled to do a walkthrough a few days prior to closing when all the disclosures go out and everyone's saying, all right, we're good to go. We're going to close. Everything's done. Cool. You can go do the walkthrough, make sure it's done to, I don't want to say to your liking, but everything's done. Okay. And then you do a final walkthrough right before closing. Please, guys, do not let your only walkthrough be the night before closing. Do not let that happen. Because if you do the final walkthrough before closing and don't go through the house again right before closing, if a flood happened, if a fire happened overnight, if there was a break-in and all the pipes were taken, all the electric was taken, and you close on the property, and then your buyer goes there and they have nothing, too bad. They accept it, they took it that way. Okay. I don't care if your buyer's out of town and you have to go run to the house a half hour prior to closing to make sure it's still standing and there's no flood. Go and do it. You need to do that. If you don't, it will come back on you. I will guarantee you that. Will guarantee you that. Okay. I've been in those situations, guys, before. It happens. Our job is to always ask what if and make sure we have a solution to that. Okay. Good. Cool. All right. Guys, adjustments to closing. The other one thing I want to talk about here is that if you're dealing with a property that has an oil tank, whether it be above ground or underground, hopefully it's not underground, but there is an adjustment that is made for the fuel in the tank. So the seller will get a final reading on that oil tank to see how much oil is in there. That bill will essentially be given to the title company, and then the buyer pays for that oil at the time of closing. Okay. Make sense? Okay. All right. Next, the mansion tax. Okay. So here's the mansion tax. And this guy is why you may find a lot of properties that sell for $990,000, $995,000, and $999,000. Because anytime that you're buying a property that is above $1 million, the buyer has to pay the mansion tax, which is 1% of the purchase price. So if someone's buying a $2 million house, they have to pay at closing a $20,000 mansion tax at closing. Oh, look, I get it. People buying a $2 million house should hopefully have 20 grand somewhere that they can spend. Doesn't mean they want to spend it though. So you got to make sure you let them know that, because if they don't know that, and then all of a sudden they're going to closing and they got to come up with 20 grand, well, then your $30,000 commission may go down to 10 or 15. All right. So be understanding of that. All right. Last thing on this part, guys, exit tax. I'm going to show the whole grid here so I can talk about all this. All right. I'm going to stop sharing for a second, guys, because this comes up a lot. Okay. There is no exit tax in the state of New Jersey. There's no exit tax in the state of New Jersey. People sit there and say there's an exit tax and think that when you move out of state, you got to pay this tax at closing. You don't have to. There is an out-of-state resident tax. You don't pay a tax when you move out of Jersey. It's an out-of-state resident tax. So if you are a resident in Florida or Texas or California, and that is your residence there, that's where you reside, that's where you are a taxpayer, you will pay a 2% tax on the sale price of the property at settlement. Okay. That is an out-of-state tax that you're paying. If you live in New Jersey and you're moving to Florida, you do not get taxed for moving out of the state. No exit tax. If you're selling a house in Jersey and you currently live in Florida and you've been there for 6 months, you are not paying an exit tax. You're not paying the out-of-state tax. That tax applies if the property you are selling was not your primary residence for 2 out of the past 5 years in aggregate. If the property was your primary residence for 2 out of the past 5 years in aggregate, you do not pay that 2% tax. Make sense? Good? Okay. Going back to sharing. People talk about exit tax all the time. There's no such thing. And the realtors say, yes, there is. There's an exit tax. I've been doing this for 75 years. There's an exit tax. Sorry, guys. It doesn't work that way. All right. Moving on. Where are we at here? All right. Failure of buyer or seller to close. Okay. If either party doesn't close and there's a breach that's found, it could be bad for everybody. Okay. That's why it makes more sense to try and work things out amicably than not. And this talks about breach if buyer or seller breaches contract, breach of party would never be liable to brokers for a commission, blah, 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 blah. Okay. There's nothing really in here that's talking about any kind of liquidated damages, guys. And if things go to court and lawsuits happen, there could be a whole lot that people are responsible for that they don't understand, that they don't get that. It's our job to try and make them aware of that. Okay. If a buyer backs out of a contract, it's because they get cold feet and we don't feel they're lawfully entitled to cancel and terminate the contract. We have to explain to them, guys, you may lose your escrow deposit. It's possible, but you also may be liable for any deficiency. If the seller has to sell for less of a price because they have to move and they take 10 grand less. You could be liable for that. You could be liable for carrying costs on the property, for taxes, insurance, utilities, anything on the property. So it could cost you a lot more than $2,000-3,000 for your escrow deposit. Just making you aware of that. My advice, consult an attorney. Okay. All right. All right. Here, moving down to the declaration of agency relationships. Please make sure this is complete, guys. I see contracts where this is not complete. Please make sure it is complete and it is completed correctly. If you are a seller's agent, buyer's agent, dual agent, or transaction broker, okay, make sure it's checked off. Okay. All right. Also, commission. Your commission is due and payable at closing. Some people think, well, I found them a buyer, so I should get paid. No, that's not how it works. You get paid at closing when the deal is done. All right. This information here, listing firm, IDs. Guys, I'm going to show you real quick how to find a real estate agent's license number and their brokerage number, okay? Because it needs to be in here. And also, your real estate license has the brokerage number, the brokerage real estate license number on it. It's 1972-103. It is actually on it. Because people ask me, what's our license number? And it's on your license. And everyone should have a copy of their license on their phone. They don't do pocket cards anymore, but they're digital cards. So you should have one on your phone. Okay. So you go to NJDOBI. That is Department of Banking and Insurance, licensee search. Click on the licensee search. Let me plug in my name. Find all the Richies. Plug in whatever name that you want, whoever you're trying to find. Okay. Rago. Oh, I got to find Tim. We're doing a contract with Tim. Oh, there's Tim. Click on actively licensed and his license will pop up. There's Tim's license number and there's the brokerage license number. There should never be a time where you guys are stressing or struggling to find an agent's ID number or a brokerage ID number. It's very easy to find. Go to the state site, NJDOBI licensee search, and Sarah will pop that link into the face group after, so you guys will be able to see it. Okay. Okay. Next, where was I? Here. Okay. It drives me insane, guys, when I see a contract and there's no commission on it. Okay. I understand this part. If on the listing side, you just leave it as per listing agreement, that's fine. I don't care. But down here, commission due participating firm, if Prime is the participating firm and you are due to get a commission, holy crap, make sure it's in there. I've received multiple contracts and seen multiple contracts where there's no commission in here. That's how you get paid. Take your time and slow down. And that's how I know you didn't read the contract, nor did you explain the contract to the other party, to your client, because this contract doesn't have you getting paid. Okay. And this is where it also comes down to it as well. This whole minus 200, minus $150 thing, that crap fee. If that ain't in here, okay, sorry. This is what matters. The contract is what matters. All right. Please take the time and make sure that a commission is in the contract. If it is not, contact whoever, prepare the contract like, yo, I need to get paid. Put my commission in there, or you enter it and you initial off on it. Okay. Make sure you're getting paid. All right. Good. Next one. If any party, the buyer or seller, is a licensee, it has to be disclosed in here. It has to be disclosed in here. Buyer or seller, I don't care if they're a referral agent, they got to be, just check it off in here that they are a referral agent. Okay. All right. This paragraph right here, this is where you guys people need to calm down. All right. It used to be that people would sit there and say, well, if I'm going to refer a lender, if I'm going to refer a title company, inspector, an attorney, whoever it is, I have to refer 3 people. No, you don't. You don't have to refer 3 people. You can refer people who you work with the most and who are going to do the best job. That's what your job is to properly guide and advise your clients. Refer them the people that you work with that are going to do a great job. This right here takes liability off of you. Any names provided by brokers shall not be deemed, excuse me, to be a recommendation or testimony of competency of the person or persons referred. Seller and buyer shall assume full responsibility for their selection and hold brokers and or salespersons harmless for any claim or actions resulting from the work or duties performed by these professionals. You do not need to refer 3 people. I will not refer 3 people. I will refer people that I work with because I know that they do a good job and I'm comfortable with that. If the party comes back, if the buyer or seller comes back and says, well, you recommended this party. Yeah, I did. That's my job. I'm not liable. It's exactly what the contract says. Okay. Stop thinking you need to refer 3. You don't. All right. Return review clause. Go over it one more time. 3 business days from when all parties sign and receive a copy of the contract, a fully signed copy of the contract. Okay. 3 business days. Notice of disapproval. The attorney, if the attorney is going to disapprove the contract, which can be done at any time in those 3 business days for no reason, attorney must send notice of disapproval to the brokers by fax, email, personal delivery, or overnight mail with proof of delivery. So what you would typically get is an email from the attorney canceling it, and then a certified letter sent via overnight from the attorney. If that letter you receive is 1 day after expiration of return review, it doesn't matter because you probably already received an email anyway. Okay. And it's also, it counts on when it was, excuse me, when they're sending. All right. All notice must be certified mail, fax. Still funny to have fax in there, but whatever. Email, recognized, overnight courier, electronic document. Okay. 3 business days is the attorney review. Okay. All right. Over here, assignment. Being that we're in a world of wholesalers right now and a lot of YouTube University wholesalers who think that wholesaling is easy and they know what they're doing, or they can watch a Facebook video and think they can make 50 grand without doing anything. You have to understand what assignable contracts are. Wholesaling contracts done the proper way are assignable, and you can assign them to another party. These state contracts here, these are not assignable, and you cannot assign the rights over to another party. There was, it may have been Rebecca DeSandra that's involved in it, but I think there was another agent that tried to assign this contract over to someone else because he was trying to wholesale a deal and he had never done it before. You cannot assign this contract to another party. Okay. Okay. Cool. Moving on. All right. We're getting ready to wrap up in about 5-10 minutes, guys. I appreciate you hanging in there. These addendums right here. Okay. If any of these apply, add them to the contract, check it off. If the purchase is contingent on the buyer's home selling, add it, check it off. If there is an HOA, add that addendum and check this off. Make it a part of the contract itself. Coronavirus, if you want to throw that in there now, go right ahead. FHA, VA, lead-based paint, new construction. This is if you're dealing with a septic tank, private well, 3 or more units, concession, short sale, solar, swimming pools, underground fuel tank. Anything here, guys, you need to add the addendum, and all of the addendums are in .loop. Every single one of them is there in .loop. You can access it from your laptop, desktop, phone, whatever you want. It's all there. Okay. Prepare those, add those, get them in here. Make sure if there's solar on the house, guys, you need that solar panel addendum. Solar is a pain in the ass right now when you're dealing with it and transferring the ownership of the panels or the leasing of the panels. Those have to be outlined very specifically. When it comes to solar panels, you also need to understand and have to know what if they're being leased, what that monthly payment is for that lease, because that monthly payment gets tacked on to the buyer's, that gets tacked on to the buyer's pity, and that gets factored in to what their mortgage payment is going to be. So if their mortgage payment is right there on the line, now all of a sudden they got a $110 a month solar panel lease, that may kill the deal right there. So you need to understand that. When the buyer's lenders is approving them for a loan, if there's solar panels unleased, they need to know what that lease payment is, because that gets factored into their debt to income ratio. Okay. Make sense? Got to know that. All right. Additional contract provisions. Okay. There we go. This part right here, guys, I can't stress to you how important it is to be incredibly specific with anything you're going to put in here. Okay. Additional contract provisions, anything else that you agree to in term has to be here. If you don't have enough room in here to put it in, then at the same time this is being prepared, add an addendum to the contract. So they're all signed at the same time and they all come out of attorney review at the same time. Okay? Be incredibly specific in here. Sign the contract and who is it? Kelly did something. There was like some dolls or some shit that were included, you know, or someone's Jordans are going to be in there, or there's like a dead car on the lot or something like that. Bobbleheads, bobbleheads were being included in the sale of the house. Write that in there. It has to be specific. Okay. Now, other part, when we talk about things that are as is, okay. What the get that out of there. In the Facebook group, guys, get that out of there. The as is clause has to be very, very specific. You go into our Facebook group, go under files. There are a lot of files that I've uploaded and have put in here. Okay. One of those such files are as is clauses right here. Click on that, copy and paste, or type it in to that part. I'm telling you right now that contracts are getting screwed up because the as is that you put in there and as is that's being put in there are so loosey-goosey, it's not even funny. If it's as is, it has to be specific language, and depending what party you're representing, either have outs or have no outs. Okay, but there cannot be any ambiguity whatsoever. It's not just property being purchased as is, inspection and informational purpose only. Okay. Have you ever seen an addendum from an attorney that was 8 words? No, you haven't, and you won't. These little hint guys, copy and pasted from attorney. Okay. These are as lock solid as you're going to get. This top one right here, if this is an as is deal, there are 0 outs, no one has any outs, then you need to put this into the contract. Put it in and drop it into paragraph 43. Goes in the contract. This is as ironclad as you're going to get, and there's not going to be any outs. Buyer's buying it. Understanding agreed property may have defects, may need repair. Buyer conduct inspections deemed necessary, which for information purpose only. Buyer assumes all responsibility for making any repairs and or improvements as required by lending institution, governmental agency, which includes CO, okay, any other entity to affect the sale of the property. Buyer agrees to indemnify and hold harmless seller, seller's agent, employees, salespeople, officers, and partners, excuse me, from any damages which may be sustained by buyer or any party. Furthermore, seller is neither responsible for nor obligated to provide or perform any certifications or inspections. They are not getting out. And if they get out, then there you go. There's your breach. And there's your EMD going over. Okay. This is a lot better than for informational purposes only, and have a good day. All right. As is with a cap clause. This is a cap clause. It's being purchased as is, which means seller doesn't have to do any repairs. However, buyer can do their inspections. And if it comes up that there are more than X amount of dollars right here of repairs that need to be done, determined by a licensed contractor, licensed New Jersey contractor, buyer has the option to terminate the contract and receive their escrow back. Okay. This is a cap clause. The last one down here is not satisfied with inspections. It means they can do their inspections. If they're not happy, they can back out. So we have different types of clauses, but you need specific wording to go in there to make sure it's locked in and ironclad, and there's no ambiguity when it comes down time to. Okay. Any inspections on the as-is part? Okay. All right. Now, here's a different one. And terms, be specific. How about that? All right. So, and that's it with the contract, guys. Okay. Now, you got to have all the buyer sign, seller sign, everyone initial. Okay. With this contract, I'm going to, I don't need to stop sharing. Guys, with the contract, I'm telling you, you have to slow down and you have to understand what the terms are of the contract that your buyer or your seller are entering into. Because what's going to happen is that they will come back to you for the guidance. They will come back to you for advice on it. If you don't know, do not give them an answer. Do not give them an answer on something about the contract if you do not know 100% that you are correct on that. Because if you do, they're going to hold you to it. And that will possibly not go well for you. Okay? This is the most important part of the transaction that you're in. This right here determines if all the work you've put in to a transaction, all the work you put in to a client is going to pay off. Because if you don't put the time in here for this, it is not going to pay off for you. And you're not doing your client a service. You're not doing your business a service. You're not doing yourself a service. Take the time and understand this contract. Read through everything with the contract. Okay? Guys, I think we're going to get cut off anyway in about 5 minutes for the time we had allotted for this. So I want to open it up right now to any Q&A that you guys have. And I urge you that there is no question that's dumb. There's no question that's laughable. Now, when it comes to contract for sale, if you have questions, please ask the question, guys. Okay? We got 5 minutes left open for Q&A. I'll take some questions.
I have a question.
Yeah.
For an appraisal gap, can we get like, how you have for the as-is clause, can we get something that we can copy and paste? Because I always find, I never know I'm wording it right.
Sure. Happy to.
Okay.
Happy to do it. Thanks for that question.
Mark, thank you. I gotta run.
Okay. Thanks, Chrissy. Take care.
Yeah.
Any other questions, guys? Cindy, I'm writing down my notes about on doing the appraisal gap wording.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. Guys, I appreciate it. Thank you very much for taking the time today. Contracts, again, are incredibly important. Spend every day reading them until you know what it means. So you know what the most important clauses are, the most important paragraphs are, and slow down, take your time to read it, convey that to your buyer and seller. Don't rush through it. It's going to bite you in the butt if you rush through it. Take your time, understand. If you have questions, you have outlets here. You have myself to give me a call. Sarah, Kelly, Tim, Rob's a broker too. Tim's office we just got licensed for Tim's office in Trevose, Feasterville. He does a ton of business and knows the contracts as well on PA. So guys, use the outlets and resources that are there to help you guys out. All right. Thank you again for taking the time for being on the call today. I do appreciate it. Go back. We'll have the recording of this. Go back and watch it again. This is the second one that we did. So there'll be a couple of recordings down the contract, and just let me know any questions you got. All right, guys.
Thanks, Mark.
You got it.
Thanks,
Thank you all.
Mark.
Guys. Have a great day. We'll see you all later.
Thank you.
Bye.